Today is the last lecture of the course Introduction into Intercultural Communication. Today we are going to speak about political correctness. In the outline we have 3 questions. Historical background of politically correct language in American English. Political correctness as a reflection of formal politeness in the cultural traditions of the English speech community, and the last, classification of politically correct language. Intercultural communication challenges today are more complex than before. One of the reasons for this is the trend in being what is referred to as politically correct. This trend has taken enormous proportion in North America, but it is also present elsewhere. Politically correct communication is not straightforward. Some people go to extremes in being politically correct, making communication difficult. Political correctness is a term which denotes language, ideas, policies, and behavior seen as seeking to minimize social and institutional offense in occupational, gender, racial, cultural, sexual orientation, certain other religious beliefs or ideologies, disability, and age-related contexts, and doing so to excessive extent. In current usage, the term is primarily pejorative. Political correctness means using words or behavior which will not offend any group of people. It is often seen as important for everyone to be treated equally, fairly, and with dignity. Some words have been used for many years in ways which may have been unkind to some people. Sometimes these words have now been replaced by other words that are not offensive. Such words are described as politically correct. The term is often used in a mocking sense, which attempts at avoiding offense are seen to go too far. Political correctness means description of the practice of using speech that conforms to liberal or radical opinion by avoiding language which might cause offense to or disadvantage social minorities. Now let's have a look at the chronology of political correctness. In the United States, a modern totalitarian mentality was born in the second part of the 20th century, which is called political correctness. In the 1960s, political correctness in the United States developed within the context of the civil rights and reform movement, when only 6% of the college students were non-white. As America was confronted with drastic demographic changes, especially the numbers of immigrants from Latin America and Asia increased, political correctness supporters demanded a proportional representation of minorities at universities that reflects American society, which led to the introduction of quota system. In the 1980s, political correctness gained real importance and became a question of public discussion. Soon the debate on political correctness left the university and became a topic of national interest, revealing itself in various movements for equality and against discrimination, for example, the Women's Liberation Movement. It is important to bear in mind that the common goal of all those movements was to create a free and democratic society where each individual, regardless of gender, race, or sexual orientation, is given equal rights and equal chances in life and equal treatment in society. Traditional way of understanding politeness consisting in a set of social norms that describe how people should behave in certain contexts, and it is generally associated with good manners and etiquette. Language politeness is typical for American and British English. This traditional view of politeness is also closely related to formal speech style, and this is how people normally understand the concept. In addition, political correctness is a reflection of the formal politeness of the cultural traditions of the English speech community in the USA. Euphemism has been a key word in the debate on politically correct language. The term euphemism means primarily the substitution of the words. A euphemism is the substitution of a mild, inoffensive, relatively uncontroversial phrase for another more frank expression that might offend or otherwise suggest something unpleasant to the audience. The purpose of a euphemism is to present a situation or an object in a more agreeable or polite light. They are often used to deliberately cloud the issue or to misdirect attention. Political correctness has produced a great impact on everyday speech. The number of politically incorrect terms that should be removed from language grew within the past years and has reached an enormous dimension. So, what is the main purpose of euphemism? In general, the Reformation concerned words that might in any way discriminate, violate, or harass people and even animals. But we could find in it the same feature of a totalitarian regime. Political correctness is vivid in language manipulation. The purpose of euphemism, first of all, is not to offend some people. Here is an example. Instead of broken home, we may use dysfunctional family. Instead of crazy, mental illness. Criminal, behaviorally challenged. Fat, enlarged physical condition caused by a completely natural genetically induced hormone imbalance. The second, to destroy old ways of thinking and replace them with new politically correct concepts. In democracy, old, from Webster's dictionary, government by the people. New, the U.S. government, which is actually a republic. Each representative represents almost 1 million people, and a senator may represent over 10 million people. With these ratios, it is difficult to claim that everybody is really represented at all. The only people that are really represented are corporations and extremist groups large enough to hire lobbyists. Discrimination. The old use was ability to notice differences, and new usage is racism. The third purpose is to rewrite history. Language is not the only aspect of political correctness. The ideology of political correctness claims also to rewrite history. School curriculums are one of the first targets for vast attempts of imposing a rewritten history to American children. Blacks would be the creators of our civilization. Besides, blacks have discovered America floating on rafts, following the currents of the ocean. The third purpose is to protect children from negative aspects of life. In 2003, Diane Ravitch, historian and educator, made quite a splash with her book, The Language Police: How Pressure Groups Restrict What Students Learn. The book described a public school textbook and test publishing industry inundated by deceptive notions of political correctness. The content of educational materials used by American children is being censored to reflect the prejudices of political correctness, to screen out topics and ideas that might be considered traditional, controversial, or offensive. Topics to be avoided included abortion, death or disease, criminal behavior, magic, politics, religion, unemployment, weapons or violence, poverty, divorce, slavery, alcoholism, or addiction of any kind. We may classify politically correct language according to the subject matter. First of all, terms for persons with physical disabilities and handicaps. Handicapped, disabled, physically challenged, differently abled. The second group, taboo words. Instead of alcoholic, we may say alcohol abuser. Instead of water closet, we may say lounge restroom. The third group are the words expressing death and murder. For example, euphemism, falling asleep or fallen asleep in the Lord. which reflects orthodox beliefs concerning death. And we may also say she passed away, meaning she died. Here also we have the words meaning warfare, job titles, race and ethnic related words, religion related words. Let's have a look at the examples of warfare terms. For example, pacification, police action, humanitarian invention, and limited kinetic action. Pacific action, so for example, while sometimes used to refer to activities designed to make life more comfortable for civilians, the term can also be used amply intervention by coercive force, including warfare. Example: pacification of Algeria, pacification of Orazova, pacification operations in German-occupied Poland, and the pacification of Tonkin. The word police action. In early days of the Korean War, President Harry Truman referred to the United States' response to the North Korean invasion as a police action. Similarly, the Vietnam War is also referred to as a police action or security action. The Clinton doctrine of military interventionism argues for involvement in warfare on humanitarian grounds. The Kosovo War is believed to be the first so-called humanitarian war. After the 1960s War Powers Act deadline for congressional authorization to remain involved in the 2011 military intervention in Libya, past Secretary of Defense report Gates refused to call the operation a war, instead describing it a limited kinetic action. Extreme cases such as sanitarian engineer for janitor, a transparent wall maintenance officer for window cleaner are cited humorously more often than they are used seriously. Less extreme cases such as custodian for janitor or administrative assistant for secretary are considered more terms of respect than euphemisms. Where the work itself is seen as distasteful, for example, rodent officer for rat catcher or cemetery operative for a grave digger. In the United States, over the course of 100 years, blacks became Negroes, then became blacks again, then became Afro-Americans. In the USA, Orientals, a word that simply means Easterns, but is sometimes seen as prejudice to the people it refers to. Distinction is now emphasized on more specifics such as Asian American, Chinese American, Korean Americans, Japanese Americans, and etc., or the country of origin such as Japanese, Chinese, Indonesians, etc. Japanese Americans itself is being replaced by recently coined terms AJA, Americans of Japanese ancestry. Hispanic, which was previously the politically correct term, has largely been replaced by Latino or, in some cases, Chicano. Indians became Native Americans or indigenous people in the United States. American Indians and Amerindians Indians are also gaining popularity. Similarly, they became known in Canada as First Nations or Aboriginal people. Having considered all the aspects of the politically correct usage of words, we can conclude that a reflection of the formal politeness is in the cultural traditions of the English speech community. Its avoidance of expressions or actions that can be perceived to exclude or marginalize or insult people who are socially disadvantaged or discriminated against. It is an attempt to replace old ways of thinking with new ones and to change the world for better. However, in reality, words alone cannot be good or bad. It is the way they are used that determines whether people feel they're good or bad. Political correctness acts as barriers in cross-cultural exchanges, and it prevents real dialogues. So the knowledge about political correctness, about avoidance of expressions or actions that can be perceived to exclude or marginalize or insult people who are socially disadvantaged or discriminated against is really important for intercultural communication, where language must also be analyzed for its cultural situation.